The tranquil morning in Pinehurst Valley shattered with the sharp crackle of urgent radio static. "We have discovered something," a rescuer's voice trembled through the handheld device. The autumn sun had just started to filter through the thick Colorado pines when the search team came across the scene. In a secluded clearing, a German shepherd rested, its fur tangled with blood and dirt. One eye absent, the creature curled protectively around something. The dog's remaining eye, amber and fierce despite its weakened state, fixed upon the approaching rescuers with a warning glare. Its form quaked with fatigue, yet still it snarled, guarding its treasured load. Softly now, the search was murmured by Captain Reynolds as he inched closer. As the team moved cautiously ahead, they caught sight of what the devoted shepherd was safeguarding, a small, pale hand, motionless, and emerging from beneath the dog's protective embrace. "Dear God," someone gasped, "it's the Wilson boy." Please give a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments, including the city you're tuning in from. Now, let's dive back into the story. Rex was not always without a home. The 7-year-old German Shepherd, despite its current state of malnourishment, still bore a powerful frame that reflected the dignity of its training. Once glossy black and tan, its coat now looked dull and patchy. The most striking feature was his missing right eye, the socket now a permanent scar surrounded by gray fur, giving him an appearance that made most people cross the street when they saw him coming. But those who looked closely enough might notice the precision in his movements, the way he assessed situations with military calculation behaviors that couldn't be unlearned even after years on his own. Rex had been elite, a specially trained K-9 unit that had served alongside America's finest, until that fateful operation went wrong. Daniel Wilson embodied it all. Rex was not diminutive, naive, or confined. At 5 years old, with sandy blonde hair and wide blue eyes, Daniel embodied a curiosity that both delighted and terrified his mother. His slight frame and asthma condition rendered him physically vulnerable. Yet, there was a quiet determination in the boy that attracted others to him. He inherited his father's stubborn chin and his mother's compassionate eyes. Melissa Wilson had crafted her existence around two fervent loves, her son and her role as a veterinarian at Pinehurst Animal Rescue. At 36, the challenges of single motherhood etched premature lines around her eyes, yet they never dulled the warmth within them. Since the divorce last spring, she had been navigating the waters of life, managing to keep things afloat, but only just barely. John Wilson continued to don his park ranger uniform with a sense of pride, even as the past year had left him feeling empty. His efforts in safeguarding Rocky Mountain National Park had served as his sanctuary following his departure from the family home. The irony was not lost on him. He could rescue countless strangers in the wild, yet he had failed to protect what was truly important. Sheriff Parker had been on patrol in Pinehurst for 23 years. The departure of his deputy due to a dog attack had instilled in him a strict attitude towards strays, particularly the larger breeds. He would frequently assert at town meetings that perilous creatures have no place among humans. Dr. Sarah Thompson had been acquainted with Melissa since their days in veterinary school. Her skill with working dogs had garnered her admiration across Colorado. She discerned the signs of training even in the most damaged creatures. On that fateful day, Agent Miller made his entrance into town, coinciding perfectly with Daniel's mysterious disappearance. His official credentials unlock opportunities yet disclose little. The yearly Autumn Harvest Festival turned Pinehurst Town Square into a vibrant tapestry of orange and gold. Kids zipped between stacks of hay and vibrant pumpkin arrangements as community members exchanged their homemade pies and crafts. This Saturday held the promise of a bright spot for Daniel Wilson in what had been a challenging year. "Can we get caramel apples, Mom? I beg you." Daniel pulled at Melissa's sleeve, directing her gaze to a stand where an elderly couple immersed vibrant red apples into a pot of bubbling caramel. Melissa smiled down at her son, cherishing these moments of normalcy. "One apple. But you'll have to eat real food first," She tangled his hair, observing the way his eyes sparkled with pure delight. The morning was spent meandering through the festival. Daniel gathered maple leaves and acorns, placing them carefully in the small canvas bag his father had gifted him on their last camping adventure. Melissa discovered that she was glancing at her phone less often than normal, granting herself this uncommon day of complete focus. Dr. Wilson Amy, a young volunteer from the animal shelter, spoke up. "I apologize for interrupting your day off, but there's an emergency at the clinic. The shepherd mix that arrived yesterday began to seize, and Dr. Thompson is unavailable until tonight." Melissa experienced a deep sense of dread. She looked at Daniel, who was already picking up on the familiar change in his mother's focus. "I have to go, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to meet his gaze for just a moment. "Mrs. Bennett from your class is right over there with Katie. Is it all right if you remain with them until I return?" Daniel's shoulders drooped, yet he nodded with the acceptance of a child familiar with letdowns. "Are you planning to return for the pie contest?" "I promise I'll try," Melissa said, already aware that such promises could lead to trouble. She guided him toward Linda Bennett, exchanged details, and departed with a lingering look at her son's retreating silhouette amidst the bustling festival throngs. Half an hour later, the emergency was stabilized at the clinic. Melissa reached out to Linda to inquire about Daniel. The reply sent a chill through her veins. "I assumed he was with you. Katie mentioned that he went to look for you about 10 minutes ago at the boundary of the festival grounds, where the well-kept town grass transitioned into the untamed scenery beyond," Rex observed from the cover of the pine trees. The German shepherd had developed a careful routine over the last 3 months since arriving in Pinterest. He steered clear of others when the sun was up, foraged from refuse behind the diner under the cover of darkness, and found rest in a sheltered culvert by the creek. The clamor and throngs of the festival had kept him at a distance longer than he preferred. Yet as the day wore on, the pangs of hunger urged him to venture nearer. He watched the humans with the measured detachment of one who had once placed unwavering faith in them, only to discover the truth over time. Daniel had not planned to stray from his path after 20 minutes with the Bennetts, observing Katie as she played with her friends while he stood awkwardly to the side. He noticed a monarch butterfly with its striking orange wings. It danced just beyond the final vendor tent, and Daniel, feeling a sense of ennui and neglect, chose to pursue it for a fleeting moment. The butterfly guided him onward, from one to the next, until the echoes of the festival faded into the distance. Captivated by their graceful movement, Daniel pressed on, tracing the butterfly's migration route into the meadow that fringed the forest. It was only after the butterfly vanished into the treetops that Daniel paused to survey his surroundings. The festival had faded into a distant murmur of excitement. Strange trees loomed around him, their leaves casting ever-changing patterns of light upon the earth. "Mom," he called out, his voice feeling small even to himself. No response echoed, only the whisper of leaves dancing in the autumn wind. Daniel hesitated, a wave of anxiety washing over him as he struggled to recall the path he had taken. Meanwhile, Rex's ears twitched, alert to the faint sound of a child's voice. He stood still, observing as the little boy drifted farther away from the town's protective embrace. The child's solitary presence evoked memories of a time when Rex held significance, when the act of protecting was his true mission. In the distance, thunder rumbled ominously. The prediction had hinted at an impending storm, with ominous clouds beginning to cluster above the mountain summits. The wind surged, bringing with it the unmistakable aroma of impending rain. Daniel quickened his pace, transitioning from a walk to a frantic run, his path erratic and filled with urgency. The initial thick drops of rain descended through the foliage. His breathing became strained, the familiar tightness starting in his chest as he reached into his pocket for his inhaler. Daniel stumbled over a protruding root and crashed down onto the forest floor with a thud. The inhaler skittered away into the underbrush. "Help!" he cried, tears mingling with the raindrops on his face. "Somebody help me!" Rex observed the boys tumble from a distance of 50 yards. He stayed motionless, torn by the conflicting urges to remain concealed for his own safety and to steer clear of humans who had brought him nothing but suffering since the loss of his handler. Yet, as the child's breathing grew increasingly labored, something profound and ancient within him began to awaken. In his thoughts, Rex found himself once again in Afghanistan, reliving his training. Locate them, shade, return them to their rightful place. The rain poured down, soaking Daniel as he scrambled desperately in search of his inhaler. His wheezing intensified, panic tightening around his airways even more. Amidst his hazy sight, a formidable figure emerged, a colossal, one-eyed dog advancing with purposeful strides. Daniel stood still, fear intensifying his struggle to breathe. The German shepherd halted several feet away, its amber eyes observing him with an intelligence that felt nearly human. Then, with its nose to the ground, the dog started to systematically search the area where Daniel had fallen. In a flash, Rex located the inhaler. He carefully grasped it with his teeth and moved closer to the boy, placing it within his reach. Daniel gazed in shock before seizing the inhaler and taking to frantic puffs as his breath began to steady. The tempest revealed its complete wrath. A brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the sky, swiftly accompanied by a thunderous roar that shook the air. The unexpected sound startled Rex, prompting a few cautious steps back, yet he remained grounded and did not run away. Daniel remained terrified yet yearned for companionship. Huddled within the meager protection of a pine tree, the temperature fell as the storm grew more fierce. Daniel's attire for the festival provided scant defense against the weather. His teeth started to clatter, his petite frame trembling without restraint. Rex lingered at the brink of a choice, uncertainty clouding his thoughts. As another thunderclap resonated above, he resolved his decision. He moved closer to the boy, settling down beside him, his warm body gently pressing against Daniel's quivering frame. Daniel stiffened at first, then gradually relaxed against the dog's surprising warmth. "Good dog," he whispered through chattering teeth. Rex shifted closer, allowing more of his body heat to transfer to the child. As the storm raged around them, man's best friend and a lost boy formed an alliance as old as humanity itself. Melissa Wilson found herself at the heart of the festival grounds. Rain hammered against her face as she cried out for her son into the intensifying tempest. The previously joyful autumn celebration had turned into a scene of chaos, with emergency vehicles flashing their lights and solemn volunteers organizing search lines. "Can you recall the last time you saw him?" Sheriff Parker inquired, his notepad already drenched despite his attempts to protect it beneath his jacket. "I mentioned around noon that Linda Bennett was keeping an eye on him while I dealt with an emergency at the clinic." Melissa's voice trembled. "He has been unaccounted for more than 3 hours at this point." The sheriff acknowledged, communicating through his radio to organize the widening search effort. The festival was abandoned as the storm grew fiercer, transforming the area into a desolate scene of deserted stalls and strewn autumn decor. A park ranger truck came to a sudden stop at the boundary of the search area, and John Wilson sprang out before it had completely halted. His face was pale as he sprinted toward his ex-wife Melissa. "What happened? Where's Daniel?" His ranger uniform was still dusty from trail work, and his eyes were filled with a frantic fear. "He drifted away from the festival," her words faltering in her throat. "John doesn't have his emergency inhaler. I found it in my purse. He must have forgotten to take it this morning." John closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this new terror. "He has his regular one, though, right?" "Yes, but in this weather with his asthma." She was unable to complete the thought. John rested his hands on her shoulders, invoking a sense of professionalism, the tranquility that had rescued numerous wayward hikers throughout the years. "We will locate him, Melissa. I am intimately familiar with these woods like no one else." Just then, Sheriff Parker broke the silence. "Tracking dogs are on their way from the county. Expected arrival in 20 minutes. In the meantime, I have teams advancing outward in a standard search pattern, and I will be accompanying them. John mentioned that he is already inspecting his equipment. I feel the same way. Melissa introduced a bold choice, either man, to confront Miles, who was deep within the ever-darkening forest. Rex had resolved to act contrary to years of ingrained caution. The young boy's health was declining swiftly. His breathing had steadied, aided by the inhaler, yet the relentless cold and rain had seeped through his clothes, leaving him vulnerable to hypothermia. Rex attempted to lead Daniel back toward town, gently nudging him in what he believed was the correct direction. But the boy's strength waned after less than a mile. As the Rexes deepened, Rex realized they would not return before the night enveloped them. The German shepherd surveyed the area, his military training emerging in a careful evaluation. They required refuge. He softly pulled at Daniel's sleeve, leading him to a small hollow nestled beneath a fallen oak. The area below remained quite dry, protected from the downpour by the substantial trunk and root structure above. "Are we going to rest here?" Daniel's voice trembled, small and frightened, as Rex urged him into the hollow. The dog leaned in, seeking closeness. Daniel's small hands grasped at Rex's damp fur, seeking solace in the reassuring warmth of his solid presence. "I long for the sound of your voice," Daniel whispered. "I'd like to know your name." Rex maintained his focus, his one good eye scanning the encroaching darkness for any signs of danger. His ears turned ceaselessly, sifting through the symphony of the forest. Something stirred in the undergrowth close by, too sizable for a rabbit, too purposeful for a deer. Rex's muscles tightened, a low growl rumbled in his throat as Daniel felt the shift. "What is it, boy? Is someone there?" Rex shifted subtly, placing himself between the hollow's entrance and the unknown presence that awaited beyond. His growl deepened, a warning that crossed the boundaries of species. The rustling ceased and faded away. Rex stayed alert for a few more minutes before finally relaxing once again. As the night wore on, Daniel's body stayed vigilant, yet he found himself slipping in and out of awareness, his petite frame trembling despite the comforting heat radiating from Rex. The dog sensed the looming threat, drawing on his military training. People required warmth and awareness. Whenever Daniel's eyes fluttered closed for too long, Rex would softly lick his face or nudge him awake. The extended night lingered, with Rexes poised as sentinels against the harsh elements and the lurking forest predators, enticed by the aroma of weakness. In Pinterest, the search center set up in the town hall hummed with a tense energy. Maps lay scattered across tables, with areas delineated in grids as church teams checked in. Melissa sat tightly gripping Daniel's spare inhaler, turning down offers of coffee or blankets. John collaborated with fellow rangers, leveraging his understanding of the landscape to guide their efforts toward promising locations. "He is 5 years old," he reminded the teens. "He wouldn't have traveled more than a few miles even before the storm arrived." Sheriff Parker came forward with an unfamiliar man in tow. Lofty, well-groomed individual clad in a dark jacket adorned with official insignia. "This is Agent Miller, representing the Department of Agriculture." The sheriff presented the Wildlife Division. "He has provided resources to assist with the search." John regarded the newcomer with instant wariness, aware of the Wildlife Division's involvement in the search for a missing child. "We possess infrared equipment that could prove beneficial," Miller articulated with ease. "While I was in the vicinity, I was monitoring reports of a menacing predator." "What type of predator?" Melissa inquired, suddenly alert. Miller paused. "Perhaps a wolf. While certain descriptions align with those of a large dog, there have been incidents of livestock attacks reported in nearby counties." John scowled. "Wolves have been absent from this region of Colorado for decades." "That explains my curiosity," Miller responded, his smile failing to reach his eyes. "Let's discuss those search quadrants." As they leaned over the maps, John observed something peculiar. Miller appeared to be more captivated by the northwestern sections of the forest areas that John knew were improbable for a child to access. What's the reason for concentrating on that? John questioned. That's rugged terrain with significant elevation changes. Daniel would have opted for easier ground. I'm just being thorough, Miller replied. Sometimes kids stray farther than we anticipate. A volunteer suddenly entered the room, cutting through their conversation. The county K-9 unit has arrived. Outside, handlers unloaded 3 search dogs, a bloodhound, a German shepherd, and a Belgian Malinois. The handlers came forward, carrying pieces of Daniel's clothing for scenting. As the bloodhounds started to navigate the festival perimeter where Daniel had last been spotted, John found himself observing the government agent intently. Something about Miller stirred a faint recollection within him. A visage caught sight of possibly during his fleeting time in the military prior to his transformation into a ranger. The bloodhound detected a scent trail that led to the forest's edge, precisely where John had anticipated. Teams have been reorganized to trace the scent path, arming themselves with powerful flashlights and emergency medical gear. The ground search will be suspended until dawn. Sheriff Parker addressed the assembled volunteers. The landscape poses significant risks when shrouded in darkness. Only the dedicated teams will persist through the night. Melissa rose suddenly. That's my boy out there. You can't simply miss. Wilson Parker interjected decisively. 3 professional K-9 teams along with park rangers and emergency personnel are actively continuing the search. Deploying inexperienced volunteers into those woods after dark would likely lead to an increase in the number of missing individuals. John rested his hand gently on Melissa's arm. He's right, he said. The experts are well aware of their responsibilities, and I'm choosing to follow their lead. So am I, she asserted. I'm a physician. They may require my assistance when we locate him. Following a short disagreement, Parker conceded, permitting both parents to accompany the professional search team as they ventured into the forest. As they got ready to leave, Melissa observed Miller engaged in a serious conversation on a satellite phone, his back facing the group. Upon noticing her gaze, he swiftly concluded his conversation. Is everything all right? She inquired. I'm simply informing my superiors, he responded. Conventional procedure. The search teams ventured into the Rexy woods, intense beams slicing through the downpour. The bloodhound guided them unwaveringly along Daniel's path, which twisted and turned in the disoriented manner characteristic of a child who has lost their way. Miles ahead, Rex stayed alert throughout the lengthy night. Twice he had to deter inquisitive threats with low, menacing growls. His strength was waning. He had gone without food for 2 days, and the chill of the dampness made his old injuries throb. Yet, he stayed close to the small boy, sharing whatever warmth he could muster, fighting off sleep as Daniel tossed and turned restlessly. As the initial glow of dawn brightened the eastern sky, Rex's keen ears detected distant sounds, human voices, and the barking of dogs. His military training identified the methodical nature of a search operation. Assistance was on the way, yet Rex's instincts were at odds. Humans represented both peril and support. His experiences since losing his handler had imparted tough lessons about the depths of human cruelty. However, the boy required medical attention promptly. Rex reached a conclusion with a careful motion. He rose and softly prodded Daniel from his slumber. The boy's face was ashen, his lips touched with a hint of blue, even under the cover. Is it morning? Daniel whispered hoarsely. Rex glanced in the direction of the sounds made by the approaching search team before turning back to Daniel. The boy lacked the strength to walk far. With a gentle tug at Daniel's collar, Rex encouraged him to climb onto his back. A realization began to light up in the boy's eyes. With quaking limbs, he hoisted himself onto the shepherd's sturdy back, grasping the dense fur of his neck. Rex moved deliberately, bearing his valuable burden up the closest incline, drawn by the distant echoes of salvation. Each stride stands as a tribute to a devotion that surpassed his own suffering and trepidation. The morning light seeped gently through the remnants of the storm clouds as the search teams ventured further into the forest. Melissa's boots squelched in the mud, her eyes aflame with exhaustion and the remnants of dried tears. She had been awake for almost a full day, yet the rush of adrenaline and the instinctual fear of a mother propelled her onward. "The dogs have found something," shouted one of the handlers as the bloodhound suddenly tugged at its leash, its nose pressed firmly to the ground. "The scent is stronger here." John hurried ahead, a flicker of hope briefly brightening his weary face. 15 years spent as a park ranger had honed his ability to interpret the forest. Yet today, he felt utterly lost and desperate. This was not just a nameless hiker wandering off the path. This was Daniel, his son, his heart, stepping outside his own body. "The tracks suggest he was progressing at a slower pace in this area," John remarked, crouching down to inspect a tiny footprint embedded in a patch of mud. He was beginning to feel weary. Or perhaps his asthma was flaring up, Melissa suggested. Her medical mind catalogued all the dangers her son faced: asthma attack, hypothermia, dehydration, and the wildlife behind them. Agent Miller examined the surroundings with a focus that felt unusual for someone in the role of a wildlife officer. His gaze swept the area with precision, occasionally glancing at a small device that he swiftly tucked away whenever someone approached. He remarked, gesturing towards some peculiar indentations beside Daniel's footprints. "Possibly dog-like." Sheriff Parker scowled. "A wolf trailing behind the boy, or a sizable dog," Miller responded. "In any case, it's not a promising indication." Melissa's stomach twisted at the suggestion. John, however, examined the tracks more intently. "These movements are not predatory," he stated, with his experience in wildlife clear. "Observe how they align with the boy's journey, not trailing directly behind. If it were following him, the tracks would reveal a different pattern." Miller's expression stayed impassive. Maybe it was just a matter of being careful. Miles ahead, Rex grappled with his cherished load. Even though Daniel's weight was merely around 40 pounds, Rex's deteriorating condition rendered the task of carrying the bull more challenging by the day. Years of disregard and harm had diminished the strength of the once formidable military dog. With every agonizing step, Rex remembered his training mission above all else, regardless of the personal toll it took. Daniel floated between awareness and oblivion, his tiny arms gently encircling Rex's neck. "You're a good dog," he whispered, "just like in the tales I've read." Rex's ears were ever vigilant, absorbing every sound in the environment. Upon hearing the faint sound of search dogs barking in the distance, he adjusted his course slightly, drawn toward the sound despite his instinct to steer clear of other dogs. The shepherd's memory surfaced in pieces as he walked. He recalled the sweltering heat and swirling dust of Afghanistan, the burden of tactical gear resting heavily on his back, and the silent communication of hand signals from his handler, Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves. He recalled the blast, the turmoil, the unfamiliar figures who seized him when he was torn from his wounded companion. He remembered the brutal arenas, the coerced confrontations with other dogs, the starvation that fueled his aggression. And he remembered his flight, sprinting for days until he finally fell. Then the month of wandering, evading humans, and struggling for survival. The injury to his eye occurred during his captivity as a consequence of his refusal to engage in combat with another dog. His captors had punished him severely, yet they couldn't shatter the essence of his training to protect and never harm the innocent. Rex found himself in Colorado, a place far removed from the deserts of his past service. All he knew was that the small human on his back relied on him in this moment, and that sufficed. Returning to town, Dr. Sarah Thompson toiled through the night at the veterinary clinic, catching fragments of news about the search amidst the flurry of emergency cases. As the early morning calm settled in, she took the opportunity to peruse the county records for any reports concerning stray dogs in the vicinity. Melissa had brought up Agent Miller's worries regarding a possibly hazardous dog, and Sarah aimed to be ready in case they encountered an injured creature. What she discovered made her hesitate. In recent months, numerous encounters have been reported involving a one-eyed German shepherd. Yet there have been no indications of aggressive behavior or attacks on livestock. One farmer recounted how the dog had successfully driven away coyotes that posed a threat to his chickens, only to vanish before he could get close. Sarah's investigation led her further into a veterinary database that monitored military working dogs. A persistent intuition conducted a search for German shepherds that had been reported as missing or lost in action. The database held numerous entries. Yet one report stood out to her: a highly trained multi-purpose canine MPC from a Special Forces unit, missing and presumed dead following an operation 3 years prior. The dog's name was Rex, a male German shepherd with striking amber eyes. The report featured a striking photograph of a vigilant dog, eyes bright and alert, standing proudly next to a grinning soldier clad in desert camouflage. Sarah reached for her phone to dial Melissa but paused, uncertainty creeping in. It was a gamble, and she lacked any evidence linking the stray in their vicinity to the vanished military dog. The final thing the search endeavor required was a futile pursuit. Yet, she composed a message: reach out to me when you're available. There could be details regarding the dog's sightings. The morning search persisted, with teams dispersing in alignment with established search protocols. The dogs put in a great effort, yet the rain from the night before had erased much of Daniel's scent. The pace diminished as the landscape grew increasingly demanding. It's time for us to go our separate ways. Representative Miller proposed. Sheriff Parker acknowledged with a nod of agreement. Miller gathers to deputies and sets off toward the northwest. The remainder of us will persist in following the guidance of the K-9 team. John shared a glance with Melissa. Neither of them had faith in the agent, even if they couldn't quite put their finger on the reason. I'm sticking with the main group, John declared resolutely. Miller shrugged. Do as you wish. He chose two deputies and set off in a direction that still seemed to John an improbable route for a lost child. As the morning progressed, Daniel's condition worsened. Rex sensed the boy's grip loosening, his frail body trembling uncontrollably despite the increasing warmth. The dog pressed on, determined to overcome the ache in his weary joints and the hunger that clawed at his belly. They arrived at a small clearing where rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds. Rex gracefully descended, permitting Daniel to dismount and settle onto a sunlit patch of dry earth. The young lad nestled into a tight sphere. His breathing was heavy. Rex gently prodded the inhaler that Daniel still held tightly in his grasp. The boy's eyes slowly opened, revealing a world anew. Recognition began to emerge gradually. He murmured this, lifting the inhaler to his lips with unsteady hands. The medication provided some relief, yet Daniel still appeared worryingly frail. I'm really tired, he confided to Rex, his voice barely above a whisper. My mother advises against sleeping when it's chilly, yet I find it impossible to keep my eyes open. Rex grasped the peril. He encircled the boy once more, forming a cozy refuge with his presence. He had to ensure the child remained warm and alert until assistance came. With gentle persistence, he licked Daniel's face whenever the boy's eyes lingered closed for too long. You're like Sergeant, Daniel murmured. Dad's friend's dog from the army. He saved people too. Rex's ears pricked at the mention of Sergeant, a title that brought to mind the handlers he knew. The young lad kept conversing, the phrases aiding him in his struggle to remain alert. My father shared some pictures with me. He mentioned that military dogs are true heroes, always ensuring that no one is left behind. Daniel's tiny hand gently patted Rex's side. You're not leaving me behind either, Rex responded, pressing closer, his single eye locked onto the boy's face. No, he would not abandon this child, regardless of the wild animals, strange humans, or his own physical limitations that lay ahead. I wish Mom and Dad were still together, Daniel confided, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad seems to be down ever since Mom started working constantly. It feels like no one has time for anything anymore. The subtle ache in the child's voice awakened a deep-seated instinct within the Rex, transcending mere training. He had observed the connection between parent and child previously, and had been entrusted with safeguarding such ties throughout his service. The boy's solitude echoed Rex's own sense of abandonment after losing his handler. At that moment, Melissa's phone vibrated with a message from Sarah. The reception was inconsistent in the forest, yet this message managed to get through. She reached out to the veterinarian while the search team took a moment to rest. "What did you discover?" she inquired, moving away from the crowd for a moment of solitude. Sarah shared her findings regarding the missing military dog. "It might be insignificant, yet the details align with the stray that's been spotted around town. One-eyed German Shepherd, strange conduct. What is the reason for a military dog being in Pinterest?" Melissa inquired. "And I'm uncertain. The report indicates that he was last seen in Afghanistan 3 years ago, presumed dead following a failed operation. These dogs are truly remarkable. There are tales of their journey back home, traversing astonishing distances." A realization dawned on Melissa. "Hold on, Agent Miller. He appeared quite fascinated by the dog tracks we discovered." "Perhaps too fascinated," thought Miller, the wildlife officer. "He claims to be from the Department of Agriculture, yet John feels he has seen him before. Perhaps armed forces." The dialogue left Melissa with a sense of discomfort that only grew stronger as she returned to the search party. Miller and his team had yet to come back, and when she brought this up to John, his face clouded over. "I don't like it," he murmured. "Something feels off about him or his involvement in this search." As midday drew near, the primary search team trailed the bloodhound to the foot of a modest ridge. The dog surged with enthusiasm, tugging fiercely at its leash. "He's found something," the handler exclaimed. Invigorating aroma hope blossomed within the weary seekers. John stepped forward, his ranger training coming to the forefront as he evaluated the ridge. "If Daniel reached that point, he'd have a clearer view," he remarked. "He's a clever kid. He may have attempted to reach higher ground." The team commenced their climb, progressing as swiftly as safety permitted. Melissa trailed closely behind John, her heart racing with a blend of hope and trepidation. At the peak of the ridge, Rex sensed the nearing searchers. His body tightened, caught in a struggle between the urge to escape and his duty to the boy. He had steered clear of humanity for such an extended period that the mere idea of facing them ignited a wave of anxiety within his weary frame. Still, Daniel found himself in need of assistance that transcended what the Rexes could offer. The shepherd reached a conclusion. With a gentle nudge, Daniel was assisted into a sitting position, ensuring he was visible from below. Rex took his place beside him, standing watch with an alert posture, even in the midst of his fatigue. "Will they be arriving?" Daniel inquired, a glimmer of hope dancing in his weary gaze. Rex's ears perked up in acknowledgement. The boy offered a faint smile, his hand trembling as he patted the dog's side. "Don't be scared," Daniel whispered. "They're good people. My mom and dad will like you." The dog, however, remained skeptical yet resolute in his mission. He was determined to safeguard this child until help arrived, then quietly retreat as he had always done. John was the first to reach the top of the ridge, his ranger training providing him an advantage over the rest. He surveyed the clearing ahead, then halted, his hand instinctively moving to where his sidearm would have been, had he been carrying it. In a beam of sunlight, his son sat pale, disheveled, yet alive next to a formidable German figure. Shepherd with one eye stood in a defensive posture that John recalled from his military days. Daniel inhaled deeply, then exhaled louder. "Daniel," the boy looked up, his face brightening at the sight of Dad. "Dad, I came across a dog, or perhaps he came across me." John moved forward cautiously, his gaze fixed intently on the shepherd. The dog's posture was attentive yet calm, a poised demeanor assessing the newcomer. Simple, John spoke in the soothing tone he reserved for wounded creatures. "Take it easy. I'm only here for my son." Rex evaluated the man's scent, his body language, and the manner in which Daniel reacted to him. The boy unmistakably acknowledged and embraced this person. The dog stayed on edge yet permitted John to come closer. Melissa emerged at the ridgetop, closely followed by Sheriff Parker and the K-9 team. Her medical training and maternal instinct collided as she hurried toward her son, only to halt abruptly at the sight of the enormous dog standing sentinel. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's okay, Mom." Daniel's voice rang out with fervor. "This is my dog. He saved me. He kept me warm and brought me up here so you could find me." Rex observed the woman intently. Her fragrance resonated with the deep undertones reminiscent of the boy's family. She moved with the meticulous grace of one who comprehended the nature of creatures. Still, Rex held his watchful position. "John," Melissa said softly, her gaze fixed on her son. "Is he?" "He's alive," John confirmed, his voice heavy with emotion. Thanks to this dog, Sheriff Parker and the search team kept a respectful distance, fully aware of the delicate situation. The handlers held their dogs in check, aware that the shepherd could view them as potential threats. Melissa's medical instincts kicked in. "Daniel, honey, are you hurt anywhere? Can you breathe okay? I'm feeling really chilly and exhausted, Mom." "My asthma worsened, but I relied on my inhaler, and Rex provided warmth." John inquired. "That's what I decided to call him." Daniel clarified that he initially trailed me like a Rex. John and Melissa shared a moment of astonishment at the unexpected twist that the boy had unwittingly bestowed upon the dog its true name. Rex stayed vigilant while the humans engaged in conversation, his single eye following every movement intently. He had fulfilled his objective. The boy was safely reunited with his pack. Now arrived the moment when Rex would typically slip back into the depths of his lonely reality. As he adjusted his stance to retreat, Daniel's tiny hand clutched at his fur. "Please don't go," the boy implored, a deep intuition guiding him as he sensed the dog's intent. "I beg you, don't leave." There was an essence in the child's voice, a pure trust in his touch that anchored Rex firmly in that moment. It felt like an eternity since someone had invited him to remain. The medical team arrived with a stretcher, carefully assessing Daniel's condition. His condition was concerning mild hypothermia, exhaustion, and early signs of pneumonia, but not immediately life-threatening, thanks to Rex's protection through the night. As they prepared to transport Daniel down the ridge, the boy refused to release his grip on Rex's fur. "He has to come too," he insisted with surprising strength. "He's hurt and hungry. He needs help too." John observed the shepherd with greater scrutiny, taking note of the signs of malnourishment and past injuries. The dog's posture, despite its fatigue, conveyed a sense of discipline and intellect that surpassed that of a typical stray. Sarah's details regarding the missing military dog appeared to be more and more credible. "We will bring him along," John comforted his son. "He rescued you, my friend. We will ensure he stays with us." Rex paused, a lingering caution evident in their demeanor as they surveyed the humans encircling them. As the medical team gently lifted Daniel onto the stretcher, the boy's anxiety about their separation was palpable. The shepherd, unwavering, made another choice, trailing closely behind as they commenced the careful descent from the ridge. No one seemed to notice Agent Miller and his team lurking in the Rexes, nor the way Miller's grip on his satellite phone grew firmer as he watched the dog that accompanied the rescue party. "Target acquired," he whispered into the device, moving forward with the extraction plan. As they transported Daniel through the forest to the awaiting ambulance, Rex remained steadfastly by the boy's side, undeterred by his own fatigue and wounds. The shepherd upheld his watchful presence, a quiet sentinel emerging from the wild. The tale of Daniel's rescue traveled swiftly through Pinterest. As the search party arrived at the edge of the forest, a throng of volunteers and community members had assembled. Cheers filled the air as the stretcher appeared, carrying the boy, followed by whispers of astonishment at the one-eyed shepherd who walked steadily beside it. Dr. Sarah Thompson stood by, her veterinary emergency vehicle ready, as Melissa informed her of an incoming injured dog along with Daniel. Upon seeing Rex, her suspicions were validated. This was unmistakably a military working dog, and his demeanor hinted at a level of training that surpassed that of typical canine units. As Daniel was being loaded into the ambulance, he extended his hand once more towards Rex. "He's coming to the hospital too, right?" he asked, his voice laced with anxiety. The paramedics shared an easy look. "Son, we can't bring a dog in the ambulance," one explained gently. Daniel's expression twisted in distress. "Yet he rescued me. He's in pain as well." Rex remained motionless, observing the exchange, grasping the essence of the discord. He had fulfilled his objective. The boy was receiving the care he needed. It was time for Rex to fade away once more, retreating to the Rexes where he had learned to endure. Yet Melissa knelt beside him, her movements gentle and deliberate, like someone skilled in tending to wounded creatures. She scrutinized him, taking in his state with careful observation. "Dr. Thompson will ensure he receives excellent care. Daniel," she made a promise, "once you both feel better, we'll sort everything out. I assure you." The boy hesitantly agreed, permitting the paramedics to shut the ambulance doors. As the vehicle departed, Rex observed its retreat. Something was changing in his understanding of the world. For the first time since losing his handler, he had made a connection with humans again, fulfilling his purpose. "Come on, boy," Sarah said gently, opening the back of her veterinary transport. "Allow me to assist you with your checkout." Rex paused for a moment, then made his way toward the vehicle with a noticeable limp. His mission had transformed and developed. The boy was unharmed, yet an instinct whispered to Rex that their destinies would intertwine once more. For the time being, he would embrace assistance. A compromise his urgent need for survival had long denied him. As Sarah's car trailed behind the ambulance heading into town, John and the Sheriff Parker stayed back, observing as Agent Miller's team came out of the forest. "Successful rescue," Miller remarked, his tone relaxed. "Fortunate the boy had that dog by his side." "Lucky indeed," John agreed, studying the agent's face. "Though I'm curious why a wildlife officer is so interested in a stray dog." Miller's face betrayed no emotion. "Concerns regarding rabies follow the established protocol." Yet John had been around long enough to identify a facade. Regardless of Miller's genuine interest in Rex, John was undeniably certain of one thing: the shepherd had saved Daniel's life, and John would guarantee that the dog received the same unwavering loyalty in return. As the unexpected rescue caravan made its way back to Pinterest, Rex rested his head on his paws in the veterinary transport for the first time in years. He permitted himself to close his eyes, completely yielding to exhaustion. The young lad was secure, the mission was complete, and perhaps, just perhaps, Rex had discovered something he believed was lost to him forever. A sense of purpose and belonging enveloped Pinnerest Community Hospital, alive with energy, as the news of Daniel's rescue rippled through the small town. Medical professionals navigated swiftly around the boy, linking monitors, delivering medication, and assessing his vital signs. Amidst everything, Daniel continued to pose the same inquiry: "Where is Rex? Is he all right?" Melissa remained by her son's side, her understanding of medicine both a gift and a burden as she grasped just how perilously close they had been to losing him. Hypothermia, dehydration, early pneumonia, and asthma complications, a lethal mix that could have taken her son, were it not for the one-eyed shepherd. "Rex is with Dr. Thompson," she reassured Daniel for the 5th time. "She is the finest veterinarian in Colorado. She will look after him well." Dr. Harrison, the pediatrician, took a moment to speak with Melissa privately after finishing his examination. "He's going to be fine," he said quietly. "Another few hours out there." He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. "The dog saved his life," Melissa said, her voice catching. "If Rex hadn't kept him warm through the night, across town at Pinnerest Animal Clinic, Dr. Sarah Thompson worked diligently to evaluate Rex's condition. The German shepherd stayed vigilant, even in his fatigue, his amber eye following her every move. He permitted the scrutiny yet upheld a professional detachment, neither confrontational nor yielding. "You're quite something, aren't you?" Sarah whispered softly while she carefully examined his rib cage, observing the stark outline of bones beneath his lackluster fur. "Definitely a military working dog. But what brought you to Pinterest?" Rex's physical state revealed a narrative of enduring neglect and struggle. Significantly underweight, bearing the marks of numerous old injuries that had mended inadequately due to a lack of medical care. The vacant eye socket displayed traces of infection that, thankfully, had cleared up, although the scarring was considerable. The marks around his neck and legs were particularly revealing, indicating the use of restraints, and Sarah felt her anger intensifying as she made the connection. "Struggling against restraints, someone exploited you for dog fighting," she said with a somber tone. Despite his condition, Rex's behavior showcased his training. He remained perfectly still for injections, followed basic commands without hesitation, and exhibited the focused intelligence typical of elite working dogs. Sarah had just drawn blood for testing when John Wilson arrived at the clinic, his mud-covered ranger uniform a testament to his recent endeavors. "How is he?" John inquired, approaching Rex with a careful respect, noting the signs of malnutrition, dehydration, and old injuries. Yet nothing seemed immediately life-threatening. Sarah responded, "He's quite a resilient dog. How is Daniel doing?" "He will bounce back. The doctors are keeping him for observation." But John shook his head, a wave of emotion washing over him momentarily. If this dog hadn't discovered him and kept him warm throughout the night, Rex observed the man, evaluating. There was an air about John that evoked memories of past acquaintances he had encountered. The serene assurance of the unwavering stare when John slowly extended his hand palm up. Rex sniffed it cautiously. "I think he likes you," Sarah observed. "I served with canine units in Afghanistan," John explained. "I'd never owned a dog myself, but I've spent time working with them." He observed Rex with keen attention. "Have you verified his military status?" Sarah nodded. "I discovered him in the database. A multi-purpose canine named Rex, who served with Special Forces, has been reported missing in action for 3 years following an operation in Kandahar province. His handler, Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves, was killed in the same operation." John let out a low whistle. "NPC training, that's the elite of the elite. These dogs are worth 6 figures, with capabilities most civilian canines can't touch." He knelt to Rex's level. "How did you find yourself in Pinterest?" The boy's ear twitched at the respectful tone, yet he upheld his dignified composure. Their discussion was cut short by the entrance of Sheriff Parker and, more concerning, Agent Miller. The agent's gaze locked onto the Rex, his expression a complete enigma. "I must quarantine that dog," Miller declared, cutting straight to the point. "A possible rabies case," Sarah interjected, positioning herself defensively between Miller and Rex. "That's absurd. This dog exhibits no indications of rabies whatsoever." "Indeed, he is a fully documented military working dog." Miller's expression momentarily shifted. "Military? I was informed it was a stray." "He is currently," John interjected, "but he was reported me 3 years ago in Afghanistan. His chip verifies it. That just gives us even more justification to isolate him." Miller asserted that he might be harboring foreign pathogens. "The guidelines set forth by the Department of Agriculture are unequivocal. Any creature with an uncertain past demands attention." "He rescued my son's life," John interjected, his tone growing stern. "I'm not entirely sure that you're truly affiliated with the Department of Agriculture." Sheriff Parker shifted uncomfortably. His credentials were verified. "And John, did he challenge them?" "As I've been reaching out to some contacts, the Wildlife Division does not dispatch agents to look into stray dogs, even those that may pose a danger. That responsibility falls under Animal Control's jurisdiction." Miller's hand shifted discreetly toward his jacket. "I find the suggestion unwelcome. Ranger Wilson, I find it deeply troubling to have been deceived during the time my son was unaccounted for." John responded calmly, "Who are you truly, Miller? And what draws you to this specific dog?" The atmosphere thickened as Miller and John confronted each other. Rex, sensing the confrontation, rose to his feet, his posture alert yet calm. Sarah laid a soft hand on the shepherd's back, offering both a sense of calm and a gentle hold. "This is ridiculous," Miller finally declared. "Sheriff, I'm asserting federal authority to take custody of this creature. It concerns the well-being of the community." Lawman Parker appeared hesitant. "I will require the exact authorization for that." "You've reviewed my qualifications," Miller snapped. "General credentials, yes," the sheriff replied, "but not specific authorization to seize animals. I would need to review some documentation that I haven't come across yet." As the argument continued, the clinic door opened and Melissa Wilson entered, her face showing the strain of recent events. "John," she called, disregarding the others. "Daniel is requesting Rex. He seems to be getting restless, and the medical team is worried about his breathing." John turned to her. "How bad?" "Bad enough that they're considering sedation, which they'd rather avoid due to his respiratory issues." Sarah shared a glance with John. "Introducing a dog into the pediatric ward is not typical procedure, nor is it a former military dog rescuing a child from impending doom in the wild." John responded. He glanced over at Miller. "Your agenda can hold off for now. This dog has just become a hero, saving my son's life, and now my son truly needs him by his side." "Not at all," Miller stated with conviction. "That dog is joining me." The impasse could have persisted endlessly had it not been for the emergence of an unforeseen supporter. The clinic door swung open once more, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man clad in an army dress uniform, embellished with the insignia of a full colonel. "I sense there's a bit of misunderstanding regarding jurisdiction," the newcomer declared, his authoritative tone resonating throughout the room. Miller's demeanor faltered, his composure clearly wavering. "Colonel Weber, I wasn't aware that you were nearby." "Clearly," the colonel responded with a hint of sarcasm. He acknowledged the others with a nod. "Colonel David Weber, U.S. Army. I hope you don't mind my reaching out, but upon hearing that a missing NPC had been found in Colorado, I felt it was important to address this matter directly." Rex's response to the colonel was instant and unexpected. The shepherd's stance transformed from vigilant fatigue to a moment of acknowledgement, his tail offering a solitary, cautious wag. Weber offered a faint smile. "Greetings, Rex." It had been quite a while since John glanced between them. "You're aware that I approve his training program for this dog." Weber noted that Rex was among our most successful NPCs. His absence posed a challenge. Miller cleared his throat. "Colonel, with all due respect, my directives are your directives." Weber interjected with a chill, instructing that the task was to locate and identify the animal, then report back, rather than to seize it without proper authorization. The revelation lingered in the atmosphere. Miller was, it appeared, not who he professed to be. He was part of a private military. Weber conveyed his insights to the group. "Freelancer. His company maintained specific agreements with international units. Upon receiving evidence that one of our missing assets could have appeared in Colorado, they dispatched Miller to look into the situation regarding the asset." Melissa exclaimed in disbelief. "He's a dog, not equipment for the U.S. military." "He's both." Weber recognized a meticulously trained and incredibly valuable service animal that merits our respect and appropriate care. He glanced over his shoulder at Miller. "Your assistance is no longer needed in this space. Inform your higher-ups that I am personally overseeing this matter." Miller's expression grew somber as he acknowledged his loss. With a subtle nod, he left, creating an uneasy silence behind him. Weber glanced at Sarah. "Doctor, what's the medical status of Rex?" Sarah paused, glancing at John and Melissa. "He is stable, yet he appears underweight and fatigued. He requires rest, adequate nutrition, and ongoing care for some previous injuries. My son requires his presence," Melissa stated with conviction. "Daniel is inquiring about Rex." The canine hero rescued him from peril. Weber contemplated this. Canines in military service often develop deep connections with the individuals they save. It's not unusual. He contemplated Rex with great care. I arrived with the intention of organizing transportation back to our training facility. But maybe there's a more effective approach. Sir John started. I don't claim to grasp all the politics involved, but I am certain that dog is the reason my son is alive. Regardless of his official standing, he has rightfully gained the freedom to determine his own direction now. The colonel offered a faint smile. You possess a degree of familiarity with military working dogs. Ranger Wilson. I completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, and before joining the Park Service, I collaborated with canine units. Weber nodded. Then you grasped their significance. He knelt before Rex, who maintained a steady gaze. This dog accomplished his last mission in his own way. Maybe it's time to consider stepping back. The term retirement brought a sense of ease to the environment immediately. In military canine circles, retirement signifies an opportunity for a more conventional life, often alongside a handler or an adoptive family. Are you suggesting that we might be able to hold on to him? Melissa inquired, her voice tinged with anticipation. For Daniel, there would be paperwork, Weber warned, along with specific conditions. Rex's training sets him apart. However, adoption can certainly be considered. Just then, Sarah's phone rang, cutting through the conversation. She responded, listened for a moment, then turned to Melissa with a look of concern. That was the hospital. Daniel's oxygen levels are declining. He is requesting Rex, and becoming more and more agitated. Melissa gazed at Weber with a sense of urgency. My son requires him at this moment. The colonel swiftly reached a conclusion. Is Dr. Rex stable enough to be moved? Sarah nodded in agreement. Yes, but let's go, Weber stated. I will take care of the hospital administration. Shortly thereafter, a remarkable procession made its way into Pinehurst Community Hospital. John and Melissa walked ahead, with Sarah guiding Rex on a makeshift leash, while Colonel Weber, impeccably dressed in his uniform, brought up the rear. Hospital staff looked on in astonishment but did not intervene as Weber displayed his military ID outside Daniel's room. Dr. Harrison awaited them, wearing a look of skepticism. Mrs. Wilson, you can't genuinely be implying that this isn't a suggestion. Weber interjected seamlessly. This is a certified military therapy animal performing an urgent intervention. He presented the doctor with a business card. Any inquiries can be directed to this number at the Pentagon. The physician glanced at the card, then surveyed the resolute expressions of those around him, and finally settled his gaze on Rex, who remained poised and attentive despite his clear fatigue. 5 minutes, doctor, Harrison agreed, stating that at the first indication of distress, we will take him out right away. Sarah made a promise to herself. They stepped into Daniel's room, discovering the boy looking pale and terrified, an oxygen mask obscuring his small face. His eyes grew large at the glimpse of Rex, and he promptly attempted to rise. Take it easy, sweetheart, Melissa advised as she moved closer to him. Rex is here for a visit, but it's important that you stay calm and keep your mask on. Rex approached the hospital bed with a careful demeanor, his training reflected in the softness of his movements. He inhaled the scent of Daniel's outstretched hand, and in a moment that stirred deep emotions in every adult present, softly laid his head on the edge of the bed. Daniel's monitors, previously indicating an elevated heart rate and troubling oxygen levels, started to stabilize almost instantly. The boy gently rested a trembling hand on Rex's head, and the dog stood perfectly still, welcoming the touch. I told you he was a good dog, Daniel murmured from behind his mask. He saved me, indeed. He did, John concurred, stepping closer to Melissa. And we shall assist him now. Harrison gazed at the monitors, his astonishment evident. He quietly admitted to Sarah that his numbers were improving. I've witnessed the impact of therapy dogs in the past, but never with such immediacy. He's more than just an ordinary therapy dog, Sarah responded, that they have formed a connection. The 5-minute limit passed without Dr. Harrison taking any action to uphold it. With each passing moment, Daniel's condition showed signs of remarkable improvement. Rex stayed alert next to the bed, his single eye seldom drifting from the boy's face. Colonel Weber watched with keen interest. The connection is mutual. He observed that Rex is showing signs of protectiveness while also looking for solace from the boy. It's uncommon for an NPC to form such a quick bond with a civilian. Perhaps they both required rescue. Melissa proposed gently. A sudden uproar in the hallway shattered the poignant moment. Agent Miller had come back, this time accompanied by 2 uniformed officers and what looked like legal papers. Colonel Weber Miller's voice echoed from the threshold. Extraction orders have been signed by General Ramsey himself. The asset is to be transported immediately to secure facilities for evaluation. Weber's expression became resolute. Present those orders to me. As Miller passed the papers, Rex's stance shifted slightly. A deep growl emanated from his chest. His gaze locked onto the agent. Daniel's tiny fingers grasped the dog's fur firmly. "Please, don't let them take him," the boy implored, his voice causing the oxygen monitor to emit a warning beep. John positioned himself with a sense of guardianship between the doorway and the bed. "This should take place in a different location, not in my son's hospital room." Weber perused the documents swiftly, his frown intensifying. "These directives pertain to the retrieval of assets in a compromised situation. There is no room for negotiation here, Agent Miller. Rex is safe and receiving the necessary attention. With all due respect, Colonel, that decision isn't yours to make. General Ramsey reports to the same chain of command that I do." Weber interjected. "I'm here in person to evaluate the situation while he's depending on your updates." He returned the documents. "I am revoking these orders while we conduct a more thorough examination. Rex will stay here until the necessary veterinary clearance is obtained." Miller's face turned crimson with rage. "You lack the authority." "I most certainly possess it," Weber responded with composure, "and I'll remind you that interfering with a military working dog is a federal offense, one that your contractor status doesn't shield you from." The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Miller backed down. "This isn't over," he warned before retreating with his men. Once they departed, Daniel's monitors indicated a spike in stress levels. Rex reacted without hesitation, moving closer to the boy to provide solace. "I won't let them take him," Daniel asserted with unexpected resolve. "He belongs to me now." John and Melissa shared a glance over their son's head. The resolve in his voice echoed the familiar stubbornness of the Wilsons, a trait they had both noticed in one another throughout their marriage, now mirrored in their son. "We'll figure something out," John assured, resting a hand on Rex's back. The dog welcomed his touch, remaining close to Daniel. Colonel Weber observed the exchange with keen interest. "A solution that meets everyone's needs might exist," he stated. "However, it will necessitate some negotiation and a showcase of Rex's present abilities." "What type of exhibition?" Melissa inquired with a hint of fatigue. "Nothing too demanding," Weber assured her. "This is simply evidence that Rex remains the dog I recall, disciplined, controlled, and adept at following commands. If he succeeds, I can suggest formal retirement and placement for adoption." Dr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Your plans will have to be put on hold. Daniel needs some rest, and honestly, so does the dog." In a moment that underscored the sentiment, Rex's head dipped slightly, his weariness finally triumphing over his alertness. Daniel observed right away that Rex was weary, declaring it with a sense of innocent confidence. "He should rest here alongside me." Before any of the adults could voice their concerns, the boy adjusted himself in his hospital bed, creating a small space. Rex glanced at the offered spot, then at Melissa and John as if searching for approval. "That's not exactly hospital protocol, Dr. T. Harrison began. "Make an exception," John said softly, "for both their sakes." After a brief pause, Melissa nodded in assent. Rex required no additional prompting. With the deliberate grace of a creature familiar with the presence of people, he ascended onto the bed and nestled next to Daniel, his form creating a shielding arc around the boy. In mere moments, both succumbed to slumber's weary child, and his one-eyed protector discovering in one another the tranquility that had long evaded them alone. As the adults transitioned into the hallway to further their conversation, Colonel Weber cast a glance back at the slumbering duo. "I have witnessed many extraordinary events throughout my military career," he remarked softly, "but that connection fits truly something exceptional. The journey ahead would not be straightforward." Miller and his employers were relentless, and Rex's enigmatic journey from Afghanistan to Colorado held secrets waiting to be uncovered. In that serene hospital room, two fractured spirits discovered solace within one another, forsaken boy and the dog who emerged from the darkness to rescue him. The following 48 hours unfolded in a whirlwind of medical updates, legal conversations, and a roller coaster of emotions. Daniel's condition showed consistent improvement, with Rex steadfastly holding onto his role as protector. The hospital staff, initially doubtful about permitting a dog on the pediatric floor, slowly came to embrace Rex's presence as they observed the extraordinary connection forming between the dog and the children. Dr. Sarah Thompson made daily visits to monitor Rex, bringing specialized food to aid in his recovery and help him regain his strength. She explained to John and Melissa that he was severely malnourished, as they observed Rex eating carefully measured portions. It is essential to gradually reintroduce proper nutrition to prevent the risk of refeeding syndrome. Melissa observed that the shepherd never finished his meal in one go. Instead, he would eat half and set aside the remainder, as if unsure when he might have the chance to eat again. The habit revealed much about his years of enduring solitude. "How long do you think he was wandering?" she inquired of Sarah. "Given his state, at least a year, maybe even longer," came the response. Sarah carefully inspected Rex's paw pads, revealing evidence of considerable journeys. "The intriguing inquiry is how he made his way from Afghanistan to Colorado. That's a voyage that defies the odds." Colonel Weber had been reaching out, piecing together the scattered remnants of Rex's elusive past. On the morning of the third day, he asked for a private meeting with John and Melissa in the hospital conference room. Rex, reluctant to leave Daniel's side, stayed in the boys' room under the attentive gaze of a nurse who had grown particularly fond of the shepherd. "I've managed to piece together parts of Rex's story," Weber began, spreading several files on the table. "After the operation where his handler was killed, Rex wasn't actually missing in action. He was stolen." "Stolen?" John echoed. "By whom?" "A private military contractor known as Cerberus Operations." Weber's expression grew somber. "They've been on our radar for years. They focus on, shall we say, acquiring military assets, equipment, weapons, and occasionally specially trained animals. Just like Rex," Melissa remarked. Weber acknowledged that NPCs like Rex embody significant investments in training, often amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some contractors perceive it as more efficient to acquire a fully trained dog rather than commit resources to training one themselves. "And Miller is employed by this Cerberus?" John inquired. "He is their expert in retrieval. Weber has confirmed. According to the records we've found, Rex was moved to a Cerberus facility in Texas after being taken from Afghanistan. He remained there for about 6 months, following Melissa's request." Though apprehensive about the outcome, Weber paused. "It seems they were trying to prepare him for a role in private security. When that failed," he paused, clearly unsettled by his own revelation. "There are indications that they attempted to involve him in organized dog-fighting rings." "God," Melissa whispered, contemplating the scars etched on Rex's body. "Rex was a military working dog with the highest level of training," Weber elaborated. "He would have been trained never to strike without orders, never to engage with other dogs. They would have needed to shatter him to ignite the fire within, but John surmised that they couldn't. An informant revealed that Rex declined, regardless of their tactics. Ultimately, he was considered uncooperative and was moved to a different facility. The trail went cold for nearly a year after that, until Melissa prompted a report of a dog matching Rex's description at an illegal fighting operation that was raided in New Mexico 18 months ago. In the chaos of the raid, several dogs escaped, and we believe Rex was among them. So, he has been wandering all this time. John remarked, journeying north in some way. It seems that Weber has come to an agreement. An extraordinary adventure by any measure. Military working dogs are renowned for their remarkable ability to traverse vast distances to reunite with their handlers or return to familiar places. However, Rex's journey stands out as truly extraordinary. Their dialogue was cut short by a text notification from the nurse monitoring Daniel. Rex was growing restless, pacing and whimpering. "We should head back," Melissa remarked, already standing from her chair. They came back to see Dr. Harrison assessing Daniel, whose breathing appeared more strained than before. Rex positioned himself at the foot of the bed, his body tense, eyes locked on the doctor's every action. "Dr. Harrison, his lung sounds are quite troubling. Clarified the pneumonia might be progressing even with the antibiotics in use. I'm arranging for a chest x-ray and thinking about transferring him to Denver Children's Hospital, where they have specialized pediatric care." Lung specialist Daniel appeared terrified, his tiny hand gripping Rex's fur tightly. "I don't want to go to Denver," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rex won't be able to join me, dear, if that's what you require." Melissa commenced. "No." Daniel's intense reactions triggered a coughing fit that caused his oxygen levels to drop significantly. The alarm blared as nurses hurried in, swiftly positioning an oxygen mask over his face. The boys were reflected in the turmoil of Rex's. The shepherd quivered noticeably, his gaze flitting anxiously between Daniel and the medical personnel. "We need to intubate," he declared with a serious tone. His lungs struggled to keep pace. "Everyone out," the charged nurse commanded, including the dog. John extended his hand toward Rex's improvised collar, yet the shepherd stood his ground, firmly positioning himself beside Daniel's bed. "Rex, come here," John commanded, employing the commanding tone he had noted was most effective. To everyone's astonishment, Rex declined the explicit order. Instead, he moved in closer to Daniel, who, despite the oxygen mask and the nurse's efforts to ready him for intubation, weakly reached for the dog. "I'd never witnessed him defy a command like this," Weber spoke softly from the threshold. Throughout all his training, the medical team was growing increasingly frustrated. "The dog must leave immediately." Dr. Harrison was adamant. John tried once more to guide Rex, whispering softly into his ear. "Staying isn't doing him any favors. Allow them to proceed." Something in John's tone ultimately resonated. Rex, displaying clear hesitation, the shepherd permitted himself to be guided from the room, yet he positioned himself firmly outside the door, his body taut and vigilant. The following hour stretched on interminably for Melissa and John. They sat together in the waiting area, bound by their shared anxiety for their son. Rex stood resolutely by Daniel's door, rejecting food and water, his watchfulness steadfast. Dr. Harrison finally appeared, his expression somber. "He's stable for the moment," he reported. "However, his condition is worsening more rapidly than we expected. The infection in his lungs is proving resistant to the antibiotics we are currently administering." "What should we do next?" John inquired, his training as a ranger taking over, directing his attention to the tasks at hand. "Navigate the current situation. An airlift has been requested to Denver Children's, and a helicopter is on its way. It ought to arrive within the hour." Melissa shut her eyes for a moment, taking in the news. "When can we catch a glimpse of him, even if just for a moment?" "He is under sedation and on a ventilator. He will not be aware." They trailed behind Dr. D. Harrison, making their way back to Daniel's room, with Rex seamlessly slipping in beside them. The sight of their son, pale and incubated, surrounded by machines, struck them with the force of a physical blow. The lively, inquisitive boy who once pursued butterflies at the festival now lay motionless, sustained by the marvels of medical technology. Rex crept toward the bed, nose twitching as he sensed the unsettling shift in Daniel's condition, and said, he whined softly, nudging the boy's limp hand. "I'm sorry, boy," John said quietly. "He's very sick." The shepherd glanced at John, then at Melissa, before shifting his attention back to Daniel. His stance radiated a sense of comprehension and resolve. Colonel Weber observed from the threshold, "I've organized Rex's urgent veterinary care while you're in Denver. Dr. Thompson has kindly offered to board him at her clinic until you return." Melissa interrupted, her gaze fixed unwaveringly on her son. "Rex will accompany us to Denver, Mrs. Wilson. The medical helicopter won't." Dr. Harrison began. "Then we will take him there ourselves," she insisted. "Daniel requires his presence." The certainty in her voice quelled any additional dissent. John nodded in agreement, resting a hand on Rex's back. "We'll find a way." As they readied themselves for Daniel's transfer, an unexpected twist emerged. Sheriff Parker arrived at the hospital, his demeanor a mix of regret and resolve. "I'm sorry," he addressed John and Melissa, "but I've been served with court papers demanding custody of the dog." He presented a document that exuded an air of authority. "It's a federal directive referencing national security issues that I must comply with." John positioned himself in front of Rex, a shield against any threat. "Our son is battling for his life. This dog is assisting him in battle. Those who seek Rex may bide their time." Sheriff Parker appeared truly distressed. "I'm left with no options, John. It's a directive from the federal government." Colonel Weber scrutinized the documents. "This is the work of Miller," he stated with a somber tone. "He's bypassed my authority." He glanced at his watch. "I require an hour to make some calls. Challenge this. The helicopter will arrive in 40 minutes. Dr. Harrison provided a gentle reminder to them. While the adults engaged in their dispute, Rex took it upon himself to make a choice. With a final glance at Daniel's motionless figure, he moved to the corner of the room and rested his head on his paws, his gaze locked on the boy. The gesture spoke volumes. He would not depart without a struggle. Anyone who sought to separate him from Daniel would need to do so by force, and Rex's military training rendered that a formidable challenge. The standoff persisted, with Daniel's condition hanging in the balance, while time marched inexorably toward his urgent transfer. Rex's quiet watch represented a devotion that surpassed the intricacies of human relationships. A connection forged in the wild that no contracts or medical guidelines could break. The distant thud of helicopter rotors filled the air, amplifying the tension that had reached a breaking point in Daniel's hospital room. Sheriff Parker lingered awkwardly by the door, the federal order gripped tightly in his hand. Colonel Weber spoke with a sense of urgency into his phone, his usually calm demeanor revealing irritation. John and Melissa stood vigil by their son's bedside, while Rex occupied his chosen corner, observing with his solitary amber eye. "They're 5 minutes away," Dr. Harrison declared as he entered the room with a team of transfer specialists. "It's time to get Daniel ready." The medical team worked swiftly around the bed, disconnecting monitors to transition to portable equipment, meticulously checking the ventilator settings as they prepared Daniel for transport. Throughout the entire scene, Rex stayed still, his eyes the only part of him that moved, observing every motion and every individual who came near the boy. "The moment has arrived," Sheriff Parker said with a hint of hesitation. "I need to take the dog now." John moved ahead, positioning himself between the sheriff and Rex Parker. "For 15 years, you've been a part of my life, and I'm reaching out to you as both a friend and a father. Refrain from this." The sheriff's unease was clear. "It's a directive from the federal authorities. John, I might lose my badge." "In that case, I shall seize your badge." A fresh voice emerged from the doorway, where a slender woman in her 60s stood, exuding an undeniable sense of authority. Mayor Eleanor Hampton had dedicated 4 consecutive terms to the service of Pinterest. Her silver hair and stern demeanor stood as prominently in the town as the century-old pine tree in the square. Madam Mayor Parker initiated the discussion, asserting that this issue transcends local boundaries. "I've been served with," she began, but Mayor Hampton interjected, entering the room with confidence. "And I recognize a legal overreach when I encounter one," he declared. She faced Colonel Weber. "Colonel, I trust you know Senator Gardner." Weber adjusted his posture with a subtle movement. "The chairman of the Armed Services Committee, yes, ma'am. He's my brother-in-law," Hampton declared with a straightforward demeanor. "We recently engaged in an intriguing discussion regarding the federal jurisdiction of military working dogs and a company named Purest Operations." She passed Weber a phone. "He wishes to converse with you personally." As Weber answered the call, Dr. Sarah Thompson entered the bustling room, making her way silently to Rex's side. The shepherd acknowledged her with a subtle flick of his tail, yet his watchful demeanor persisted. "I brought something," Sarah whispered to Melissa, pulling a small device from her lab coat pocket. "It's a microchip scanner. If we can verify Rex's military ID right away, it could be beneficial." The mayor, in the meantime, had shifted her focus to Sheriff Parker. "I am establishing a provisional emergency authority over this animal as town property until federal agencies can resolve the situation. That dog rescued a child from Pinterest, and we look after our own. With all due respect, ma'am, you don't have the authority to put me on trial." "Parker," the mayor interrupted, "I've been gearing up for the town council meeting, and then this situation arose. With 37 years of municipal code committed to memory, I assure you I can uncover something that will hold up just long enough to allow that helicopter to take flight." The tense standoff was suddenly disrupted by the arrival of the helicopter medical team. Upon entering to oversee Daniel's transfer, their professional demeanor briefly wavered at the sight that greeted them. The bustling room, the charged standoff, and the one-eyed German shepherd steadfastly guarding his post. "What's happening here?" the lead flight medic inquired. "We need to act quickly," Colonel Weber concluded his call, his expression shifting from frustration to satisfaction. "Sheriff, I believe this will pique your interest." He passed Parker a message that had just come through on his phone. "Issued directly from the Department of Defense, this document overrides your federal order." Parker skimmed through it, a wave of relief spreading across his features. "This seems to be a directive that has been confirmed by Weber. The Secretary of Defense has personally designated Rex as crucial to a delicate ongoing operation. Any disruption involving the dog has now escalated to a matter of national importance." A faint smile crept onto his lips. "At times, the complexities of bureaucracy can actually benefit us." The flight medic cleared his throat with a hint of impatience. "While that is certainly intriguing, our priority is to transport a critically ill child. Are we bringing the dog or not?" Melissa glanced at the medic with a look of desperation. "He keeps my son calm. Is there a possibility?" "Absolutely not," the medic declared with conviction. "There are absolutely no animals allowed in the medical helicopter. This is a firm rule." John knelt beside Rex, speaking softly. "We'll follow by car. I promise we'll be right behind you." The shepherd's gaze stayed locked on Daniel with a sense of skepticism. As the medical team readied to transport Daniel's gurney, Dr. Harrison took a moment to assess the boy's vitals one final time. "His oxygen levels are declining once more," he declared somberly. "It is essential to modify the ventilator settings." In the brief silence that ensued, something remarkable took place. Rex emerged from his corner and made his way to the bed before anyone could intervene. He positioned his front paws delicately on the edge of the mattress and leaned in, his nose almost brushing against Daniel's face. The atmosphere grew still as the shepherd examined the boy intently, shifting from his face to his chest. Then, with careful intent, Rex started to nudge the right side of Daniel's chest, whimpering with urgency. "Bring him back, Doctor," Harrison commanded, stepping in to shield his patient. Sarah moved ahead swiftly. Did you know that military dogs are trained to detect changes in body chemistry? Some of them can sense medical events before they occur. The flight medic experienced with military units nodded in agreement. She is correct. In Afghanistan, we had dogs capable of sensing seizures before they happened. Harrison paused for a moment before swiftly choosing a course of action. I'll take a closer look at that particular area. He placed his stethoscope against the precise location. Rex had shown a keen interest in listening closely. His expression shifted from doubt to worry. Diminished breath sounds are noted here, contrasting with the rest of the lung field. The flight medic accompanied him, attuned to his own thoughts. There may be a developing pneumothorax or an infection pocket. We require a portable ultrasound immediately. Harrison placed an order. A nurse hurried to fulfill the request. In just a few moments, the doctor's doubts were validated. A previously unseen pocket of infection has emerged here, not detectable in earlier scans. It's creating tension in the lung. We must relieve it before moving. As the medical team worked swiftly to tackle the newly identified complication, Melissa turned to Rex, her eyes widening with understanding. He knew, she whispered. He felt an unsettling presence in that particular place. The process was executed swiftly, with a slender drainage tube placed into Daniel's chest. His oxygen levels began to rise almost instantly. Had we not identified this prior to the flight, Doctor? Harrison's words hung in the air, and spoken. The meaning was evident to all present in the room. The flight medic regarded Rex with a fresh sense of admiration. That dog had once more played a crucial role in saving this child's life. He faced his team adjustment to the strategy. The dog accompanies us, however. The protocols initiated by one of the team members led me to make a decision in the field. The medic asserted with conviction. That animal is essentially a medical device at this stage. We require him with the patient. While the others looked on in astonishment, he turned his attention to Melissa and John. One of you may join your son in the helicopter. The other will have to journey to Denver alongside the colonel and the veteran. Melissa and John shared a glance. Step into the helicopter. John mentioned that he would drive Rex over if they reconsider their decision. The flight medic sighed in disbelief. The dog arrives in the helicopter, and after what I've just seen, there's no way I'm keeping them apart. In a remarkable departure from the usual procedures, Daniel Wilson found himself en route to Denver Children's Hospital, flanked by his mother and a one-eyed German shepherd. The dog remained perfectly still during the 15-minute flight, its gaze fixed unwaveringly on the boy's face. John, Colonel Weber, Dr. Thompson, and Mayor Hampton were followed by Carr, leaving Sheriff Parker to manage the growing frustration of Agent Miller, who had just arrived at the hospital as the helicopter took off. This isn't over, Miller declared, watching the aircraft vanish into the distance. I believe it is, Mayor Hampton replied coolly. Purest looks after its own, including those dedicated to saving our children. At Denver Children's Hospital, the arrival of a critically ill child alongside a former military working dog brought about an extraordinary scenario. Hospital administrators were initially hesitant, referencing policies and health regulations. However, the flight medic's emphasis on the dog's part in recognizing Daniel's critical condition caused them to hesitate. This creature identified a medical issue that our devices overlooked, he conveyed to the team on the other end. I am recording it as a required medical detail in my transfer report. As the administrators engaged in their discussions, Rex decided to take action himself. He took his place beneath Daniel's bed in the pediatric ICU with meticulous care, striving to be as inconspicuous as possible while keeping a watchful eye. The team engaged in the task of stabilizing their new patient, subtly acknowledged his presence as they navigated through the bureaucratic inquiries. When John finally made his entrance alongside Colonel Weber and Dr. Thompson, Rex had found an unspoken place among the PICU nurses, who sensed what the adults had been debating. The shepherd's presence was having a tangible, Beneficial impact on Daniel's vital signs. His numbers improve when the dog is nearby, the charge nurse conveyed to them. We're currently awaiting administrative approval, but from a nursing standpoint, that dog isn't moving any time soon. Colonel Weber assumed command of the situation, submitting the hospital administrators with quickly put together documentation identifying Rex as a therapy animal in federal service. The documentation featuring the Department of Defense CO was vague enough to generate confusion, yet official enough to prevent immediate objections. As the drama unfolded, Dr. Sarah Thompson conducted a more detailed examination of Rex in a secluded corner of the waiting room. What she uncovered drove her to seek out John and Melissa. Rex's microchip is more than just a typical identification chip, she elaborated, revealing the scanner results. It's a highly specialized military chip containing embedded information. Rex was not merely an NPC. He was involved in a secretive initiative known as Guardian. Colonel Weber entered their discussion, his demeanor serious. That clarifies Miller's determination. The Guardian program was shrouded in secrecy. A mere few dogs were prepared for it. Trained for what exactly? John asked. Advanced medical detection. Weber elucidated that these dogs were trained to sense subtle alterations in human physiology, including infections, internal bleeding, and even specific forms of cancer. They were being crafted to support specialized operations medics. That was how he became aware of Daniel's chest infection. Melissa understood that his actions went beyond mere protection. He was following the protocols he had been taught. Weber affirmed this. That training holds immense value for private contractors such as Cerberus. They wouldn't merely be obtaining a highly trained military dog, they would be gaining access to classified medical detection technology. The implications settled in. Rex was more than just a stolen military dog. He was wielding specialized skills in his very training that had just rescued Daniel's life for a second time. As Daniel found his footing in the PACU, Melissa and John kept a watchful eye beside Rex. The shepherd's demeanor consistently captivated the medical team. He stayed quietly nestled beneath Daniel's bed throughout procedures, displaying an alert yet serene presence during physician rounds. Most notably, he was reliably attuned to even the slightest shifts in Daniel's condition, often sensing them before the monitoring equipment could register any changes. On the third day at Denver Children's, the pulmonologist delivered her announcement. The specific antibiotics are proving effective, his lungs are showing improvement, and the infection is diminishing. For the first time since this challenging journey began, Melissa permitted herself to genuinely believe that her son would fully recover. She discovered John in the hallway engaged in a hushed conversation with Colonel Weber. "He's getting better," she said, tears of relief glistening in her eyes. "The physician indicates that he might be able to come off the ventilator as soon as tomorrow." Their moment of joy was fleeting. Agent Miller returned, this time flanked by 2 military police officers and a fresh batch of documents. Colonel Weber, Miller stated with a hint of satisfaction, "I have orders signed by General Ramsey for the immediate seizure of the military asset. Rex code name Guardian 7. The members of Parliament will accompany the animal to a safe location." Weber scrutinized the documents with great attention, his demeanor betraying no hint of his thoughts. These seemed to be arranged in the order he ultimately recognized. "Surely, you jest." John expressed his objections following all that has transpired. "This dog has rescued Daniel's life on 2 occasions. The dog is government property, carrying classified training," Miller stated with an icy demeanor. "Nostalgia doesn't alter that reality." As they debated, a nurse rushed from Daniel's room. "The dog is alerting again," she said urgently. "Something's happening with Daniel." All considerations of legal jurisdiction faded away as they hurried back to the PICU. Rex lingered next to Daniel's bed, persistently nudging the ventilator tubing, emitting a whine filled with unusual restlessness. The attending physician swiftly evaluated the circumstances. "The tube is blocked," he declared, already taking steps to resolve the issue. Well spotted. Once again, Rex had identified a life-threatening complication before the medical equipment could register it. Had the obstruction persisted even for a few more minutes, Daniel could have faced brain damage due to oxygen deprivation. Miller observed the scene as it unfolded, his resolute expression wavering for the first time. The military police officers cast uneasy looks at one another, evidently hesitant to take action against an animal that had just rescued a child from a perilous situation. At that instant of uncertainty, a new presence stepped into the PCU. A gentleman in his 50s clad in the attire of a two-star general. His presence drew the focus of everyone in the room, especially the military personnel. "General Ramsey," Colonel Weber said, standing at attention. "At ease, Colonel," the general replied, his eyes scanning the area, pausing on Rex, who had resumed his place next to Daniel after the ventilator was cleared. "I came to see for myself what all the commotion is about." His gaze turned to Agent Miller. "I would like to know why one of my orders is being enforced with such fervor when I don't remember signing it." The hue faded from Miller's complexion. "Sir, I have the documentation available at this moment. It seems that your signature is being used on documents that I am not familiar with." General Ramsey interjected with a chilling tone. "An important issue that will be examined in depth." He turned back to Weber. "I received your report regarding Rex's recovery and his support for the Wilson boy." "Extraordinary tale indeed, sir," Weber concurred. "In my view, Rex has showcased the complete effectiveness of the Guardian program in a practical setting. His keen sense for identifying medical emergencies has repeatedly saved this child's life." General Ramsey approached Daniel's bed, taking note of Rex's vigilant stance. "The connection is clear," he observed, "and quite rare for a Guardian trained in MPC." He cast his gaze upon Melissa. "And John, your son seems to have achieved what our top experts could not. He has established a true bond with one of our most specialized resources." "Daniel doesn't view it as a resource," Melissa remarked softly. "He sees a friend who saved him," the general reflected with a thoughtful nod. "At times, the most effective military choices arise from the awareness that a mission has transformed beyond its initial scope." He clarified the decision that had been made. "Colonel Weber, please prepare the retirement papers for Guardian 7, designated as Rex. Comprehensive health care coverage and acknowledgement of service." Sir Weber expressed his surprise at the abrupt decision. "This dog has accomplished his task in the most commendable way imaginable," General Ramsey declared with conviction. "He has truly deserved his retirement." He cast a quick look at Miller. "And I suspect that Cerberus operations will be preoccupied with addressing accusations of document forgery and meddling with a DOD asset." As Miller was escorted from the hospital by his own military police, the atmosphere in the PQ shifted for the first time in days. The cloud of uncertainty lifted. General Ramsey posed one last inquiry to Melissa and John. "Assuming your son recovers as expected, would you be open to providing a home for a retired military working dog? It does come with certain responsibilities. Rex will require tailored attention and empathy." Melissa and John shared a glance that conveyed an unspoken bond. "It would be our privilege," John responded. "It seems to me that Daniel reached that conclusion days earlier in the forest, almost as if he grasped the essence of the conversation." With a single, decisive wag of his tail, Rex revealed the first hint of happiness anyone had ever witnessed from the usually stoic shepherd. The truth had finally triumphed. Rex's journey from Afghanistan to Colorado, transforming from a military weapon to a child's guardian, was approaching its rightful resolution. On a crisp autumn morning, reminiscent of the day Daniel first went missing, the Wilson family gathered on the porch of their new home. 6 months had passed since the dog emerged from the Rexes to rescue the lost boy, and now at last he had found a place to belong. The unassuming ranch house rested on 5 acres at the outskirts of Pinterest, with distant mountains framing the horizon and ample open space for a boy and his dog to wander freely. Refrain from venturing beyond the creek. As Daniel got ready to embark on his morning adventure with Rex, Melissa offered a gentle reminder. At the age of 6, her son had fully overcome his challenges. Although she observed that he no longer roamed far on his own, Rex remained ever present, a steadfast protector with a disciplined demeanor and a tender touch. "We won't," Daniel promised, adjusting the small backpack that held his emergency inhaler. A water bottle and a two-way radio served as concessions to parents who had nearly lost him once before. Rex stood at attention beside the boy, his coat now glossy and full, his once gaunt frame filled out to healthy proportions. The shepherd's lone eye gleamed with vigilance, perpetually surveying the landscape around him. The empty socket, now less prominently scarred due to Dr. Thompson's reconstructive surgery, stood as a testament to his challenging history. Returning for lunch, John stepped onto the porch from within the house. Recent months have ushered in transformations for him too. Following Daniel's recovery, John requested a transfer to the ranger station closest to Pinnerest. He resided in the guest cottage situated behind the main house. Not entirely a complete reconciliation with Melissa, but a significant step toward mending the family that Rex had played a crucial role in saving. As Daniel and Rex embarked on their journey through the meadow that made up their front yard, Melissa rested against the porch railing next to her former spouse. "He's performing admirably," she noted. "They both are." John gave a slight nod. "Rex's adjustment to life as a pet has been more seamless than anyone anticipated. Colonel Weber states that it's nearly unheard of for a dog with such training. He likely doesn't perceive himself as a companion animal." Melissa observed the duo from afar. "It seems he's been given a new assignment." Daniel, the transformations in their lives had been significant since that pivotal day in the woods. Following Daniel's recovery and release from Denver Children's Hospital, Rex's retirement from military service was processed with remarkable speed. General Ramsey personally attended the intimate ceremony at Fort Carson, where Rex was presented with his official honorable discharge and service medals. The following inquiry into Cerberus operations uncovered a far-reaching plot to seize military working dogs for private security purposes and, more alarmingly, to establish organized dog-fighting rings that served affluent underground clientele. Agent Miller now confronted federal charges alongside multiple executives from the contracting firm. Rex's transition to civilian life unfolded gradually. The initial weeks proved to be quite demanding, as the shepherd kept a watchful eye on Daniel, hesitant to allow the boy out of his sight, even for brief moments. Dr. Thompson collaborated intimately with the family, guiding them to grasp Rex's viewpoint and requirements. For years, she had explained that he had been living in survival mode. He will need time to believe that he is genuinely safe, that Daniel is secure, and that he can relax instead of being on high alert all the time. Slowly, with a sense of calm and steady habits, Rex started to unwind. The initial instance of witnessing him cautiously pursue a ball thrown by Daniel marked a pivotal moment that brought tears to Melissa's eyes. Colonel Weber made his monthly visits, partly to assess Rex's adaptation and partly, Melissa suspected, because he had developed a fondness for both the dog and the family. He played a crucial role in ensuring that Rex's specialized veterinary care would be included in the military's retirement benefits, a remarkable arrangement that acknowledged the shepherd's outstanding service. The Secretary of the Army became personally invested in Rex's situation once the story made its way to Washington. Weber noted, "It appears that even the most seasoned Pentagon officials are not untouched by the story of a military dog rescuing a child." The tale had certainly traveled well beyond Pinnerest. The national media had taken notice of the extraordinary rescue, although General Ramsey had made certain that the specifics of Rex's specialized training stayed confidential from the public eye. Rex was a former military working dog who had somehow made his way to Colorado and saved a lost boy remarkable enough without disclosing his ties to the Guardian program. Pinnerest, had welcomed Rex as a beloved figure in the community. Mayor Hampton announced an official Rex Day in June featuring a modest parade where the shepherd walked solemnly alongside Daniel, appearing bemused by the attention, yet enduring it with a sense of military stoicism. Perhaps the most significant transformation occurred in the relationship between John and Melissa. The near loss of their son, coupled with the weeks spent together during his recovery, opened up opportunities for healing conversations that had long been overdue. I was so fixated on my career, on being the ideal ranger, John confessed during a late-night talk at the hospital. I believed that providing for you both meant excelling at my job, even if it meant I was rarely home, and I immersed myself in the clinic after you left. Melissa had replied it was simpler to rescue other beings than to confront what we had lost. They hadn't reunited in the conventional way, but they had discovered a fresh arrangement of family, one that revolved around their son and, unexpectedly yet seamlessly, included a one-eyed former military dog with a secretive history. As she observed Daniel and Rex wandering through the meadow bathed in the gentle morning light, Melissa was enveloped by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. "Do you think he remembers?" she inquired abruptly. Wandering through the woods, John pondered the inquiry. He seems to recall just enough to exercise caution, yet not enough to feel fear. "It's quite a gift, really. Rex has a way of remembering," Melissa whispered gently. "His gaze is unmistakable as it lingers on Daniel, particularly amidst the trees. He consistently places himself between Daniel and the denser woods. Certain instincts remain timeless." John consented to either option presented by them. Across the meadow, Daniel stumbled upon something intriguing near the tree line. Rex's lingered beside him, head tilted, as the boy scrutinized a cluster of late wildflowers. The morning sun highlighted the shepherd's silhouette, casting him in sharp relief against a tapestry of golden autumn foliage. "I've been pondering," John said cautiously. "The guest cottage is suitable for the time being, but perhaps we should explore alternative options for Daniel's benefit." Melissa turned to examine his face, observing the vulnerability present, something the self-assured ranger had seldom revealed throughout their marriage. "What type of arrangements? I'm not proposing we revert to how things were," he clarified swiftly. "Perhaps we could explore the possibility of reconnecting as a family, taking it one day at a time in a fresh manner." Before Melissa could reply, Rex's unmistakable alert bark captured their focus. The shepherd had taken his place protectively next to Daniel, who was waving with enthusiasm. "Mom, Dad, come see," the boy exclaimed. "We found a turtle." John smiled. "Duty calls. Shall we together?" They traversed the meadow, heading toward their son and his loyal protector. Whatever the future held for them as a family, Rex had provided this second chance, this opportunity to rebuild what had been broken, to forge something stronger from the remnants of their past. As they approached Daniel, Rex eased his vigilant stance, acknowledging their arrival with a subtle shift in posture. The shepherd had come to understand the importance of sharing his protective responsibilities, trusting that the boy's parents were integral to his mission. "Now, Rook," Daniel explained with enthusiasm, gesturing towards a small box turtle as it made its leisurely journey through the grass. "Rex discovered him. He didn't even make a sound or anything. He just demonstrated it to me with such tenderness." John crouched next to his son, observing the turtle intently. "That's because Rex knows exactly what requires safeguarding," he remarked, gently resting a hand on the shepherd's back. "He's quite astute in that regard." Daniel proclaimed with unwavering certainty that this was the most intelligent dog of all time. Rex received the compliment with a sense of composed honor, yet Melissa observed the faint indicators of satisfaction in his relaxed ears and gentle gaze. The shepherd, who had previously been acquainted solely with obligation and existence, was discovering something fresh, a sense of belonging. As night descended upon their abode, the family convened on the porch. Daniel sat on the steps, Rex nestled against his side, both of them gazing at the first stars as they began to twinkle in the evening sky. John and Melissa sat in rocking chairs, the comfortable silence between them a healing of its own. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Rex hadn't found me," Daniel said suddenly. "Within the woods, I mean." Melissa felt her heart tighten at the thought. But John responded before she could gather her thoughts. "But he did find you," he said simply. "That is what truly counts." Daniel nodded, pleased with this insight. He encircled Rex's neck with his arm, and the shepherd, in turn, settled his head gently on the boy's lap. As the evening settled into a serene hush, Melissa pondered the unlikely path that had united them all. A lost boy, a wounded warrior dog, a fractured familial discovered and mended through an act of instinctive compassion in the wilderness. Rex had roamed for years, relying on his training and instincts, until a deeper calling drew him to the forest's edge on the day of the autumn festival. No matter what label science might assign to this intuitive understanding or something more enigmatic, Melissa felt nothing but gratitude for it. As the stars multiplied overhead, Rex maintained his silent watch beside Daniel, his single eye mirroring the celestial glow. The dog that had stepped out from the darkness had led them all into a lighter realm, a space of new beginnings and rekindled optimism from his cozy spot beside Daniel. Rex observed his realm with the contentment of a task accomplished. The young lad was secure, the group was united. Everything was as it ought to be, for the one-eyed guardian had at last discovered his way back home. In a world that frequently rushes forward, leaving devoted souls in its wake, Rex's tale serves as a poignant reminder of what is genuinely significant. This one-eyed shepherd, abandoned after faithfully serving his country, illustrates that our scars do not define our ability to love and protect. Like many who have endured life's challenges, Rex discovered his purpose when he was needed most, curling protectively around a lost child and providing warmth when he had none to spare. Recall a time when neighbors looked out for one another's children, when sacrifice was not questioned but given freely. Rex represents these enduring principles. His journey from battlefield to family guardian reflects the transitions we all experience in life, moving from one chapter to the next while carrying our core selves through changes and challenges. As we observe our children and grandchildren maneuver through a world filled with uncertainty, the tale of Rex reminds us that authentic bonds continue to hold significance. At times, those who bear the deepest scars possess the greatest capacity to offer. Family isn't solely defined by our origins. It's shaped by the bonds we create through love and loyalty. In Rex's, a vigilant gaze reveals the essence of our truest selves. Even as twilight descends, we remain steadfast in protecting what we hold dear.